Hello. Now I use the magic stone to create a werewolf. Stone does not want to obey. The summer between senior year of high school and freshman year of college, I worked as a lifeguard at a scout summer camp. I would drive roughly 4 hours on Sunday morning to get down to the camp, then, on Thursday afternoon after that week's session had ended, I would drive the roughly 4 hours back home so I could relax and recharge in the air conditioning of my parents' house. Sure, it was a lot of miles on my poor, shitty car. But I always loved being able to speed down those country highways, car top down and music blasting. I got pulled over once or twice, but I always managed to talk my way out of tickets, and quickly learned where the cops would lurk and run radar. Early on in the summer, I was driving back home on a cloudy, relatively cool Thursday. It was mid-afternoon. About an hour into my journey, when I saw a painted sign on the side of the highway, "Fruit stand 1 mile on right." I was in the middle of nowhere, endless acres of wheat bordered the highway, and I decided to stop, get some fruit to bring home to my mom, and see if there was a bathroom I could use there. As the sign promised, 1 mile ahead on the right was the fruit stand. I pulled off the highway and my tires crunched over the gravel drive that led up to a classic-looking farmhouse. The fruit stand was a hand-built garage of sorts off the side of the house. I parked my car and called out a greeting. A sun-weathered, overall, worn boots, and straw hat-wearing man greeted me from inside the shade of the fruit stand. As I browsed the selection of produce, which was mostly early berries, tomatoes, watermelons, and the like, I made conversation with the farmer. He introduced himself as Mike, and he and I ended up sitting and talking for the better part of an hour. He commented on my damn foreign car. I told him how I had built it myself, and learned to drive stick in it, which he approved of. He gave me college advice and told me how he had gotten his degree through the military. At some point, his wife Elizabeth had come out and joined us, and she was as sun-weathered as he was. I drove away that day with my passenger seat full of fresh bread, fruits and veggies, and some fresh eggs in my cooler. I made it a point to stop at the fruit stand as I made my trips back and forth between camp. Our relationship grew to the point where I could just walk into their house, call a greeting, and we'd sit down and have drinks and snacks. They didn't have any children, so I think they were pretending I was their child or grandchild or something. The three of us were having dinner out on the porch one evening. The sun had begun to cast long purple shadows, and a cool breeze kept the flies away. From where I was sitting, I could see down their driveway, and across the highway to the wheat fields on the other side. The sun had illuminated the stalks of wheat to a beautiful golden, but that didn't change the fact that the seemingly endless wheat fields creeped me out to no end. As I stared across the empty highway, I saw something. A dark, hunched figure was slowly emerging from the wheat. And when I say slowly, I mean slowly. It took me a solid 2 minutes to even recognize the figure was moving, and not stationary. We watched this figure until it was free of the wheat, then as fast as you can blink, it went from the edge of the field to the edge of the highway pavement. And it just stood there, watching us. Then, it was across the far lanes of the highway and was now at the center median. Inside. Now. Mike's voice startled me. We quickly abandoned our dinner, and when we shut and locked the door, the creature was at the foot of the driveway. The best way I can describe this creature is Werewolf, drawn by Stephen Gammell of the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark Book series. Its feet were too large, hands too big and fingers too long. It was probably two of my cars stacked on top of each other tall and was incredibly buff. I say buff because from 50 feet away, I could see that this thing's muscles were massive. Two large ears sat on top of its head, and a narrow, pointy face sat atop its wide shoulders. And then, it was gone, but a moment later, it reappeared on the front porch, its awful face millimeters away from mine, pressed flat against the thin pane of glass separating us. Liz let out a terrified shriek, Mike dove for his shotgun, and me? I'd like to say I did something brave, like shot it, or lured it away from my adoptive grandparents, but I didn't. I couldn't make my body move. We just stood there, staring into each other's eyes. I saw things, horrible things. I don't have the words to describe. Death, fires, destruction. I was a frightened rabbit in the jaws of the wolf. I blacked out. I came to when the back of my head cracked against the hardwood floor, or maybe when Mike's shotgun was fired through the door's mail slot, or maybe when the creature let out an ear-bleedingly loud scream, or some combination of the three. The creature staggered off of the front porch and disappeared around the side of the house. All night long we sat huddled in the living room as the creature circled the house screaming, scratching the walls and glass with its terrible claws. At times, it sounded as if there were more than one. The screaming and scratching came from all around the house, from upstairs, the basement, in our heads. For the first time since I decided I was an atheist at age 9, I prayed. It didn't do much, obviously, but I gave it a good try. At some point during the night, my car alarm started going off, and I was more worried about my car than I was myself or the farmers. What can I say? I loved that car, and I still have it all these years later, in all of its shitty glory. Then, just as the sun was starting to rise, everything calmed down. The farm was awash in beautiful warm light as Mike and I crept outside, armed with a rifle and a sawed-off shotgun. The siding on the house beat up, deep gouges had been carved into the ground, and the top on my car was shredded. Produce was scattered all over the ground, but the creature was nowhere to be seen.